Welcome to Energy Talk with EMC. Aravinu Urjam Bagara. Today, we are delighted to welcome Ms. Aditi Patel, Decarbonization Officer for Kerala at GBPN, an architect and sustainability professional with over 10 years of experience across design, community development, and environmental responsibility. She brings valuable expertise in climate responsive construction and sustainable design. Her work focuses on integrating traditional wisdom with modern sustainability practices while contributing to research, policy, and capacity building initiatives for meaningful and scalable climate impact. Today, she joins us to share her perspectives on from traditional wisdom to building decarbonization. Let's welcome Ms. Aditi to today's Energy Talk.
Thank you, Arya. Hello, everyone. I would like to begin by sincerely thanking the Energy Management Center and especially Dr. R. Harikumar for the wonderful initiatives that they have been taking in this space. I'm also grateful for the opportunity to be here and share my thoughts and experiences with all of you. It is a pleasure to be part of this conversation, and I hope what I share today adds to the larger discussion on building a more resilient and sustainable future. When we talk about energy efficiency in buildings, the conversation very quickly moves towards technology. We talk about efficient air conditioners, better glass, high performance glass, solar panels, building automation, sensors, and smart buildings. All of these are important, but I want to take a step back and ask a slightly different question. What if some of the solutions we are looking for are not new at all? What if some of them are sitting in the building, streets, and landscapes that we have inherited from previous generations? I work with GBPN in Kerala, stationed at the Energy Management Center, and my work focuses on building decarbonization. Through the Building Decarbonization Solution Center, we are looking at how buildings in Kerala can become more energy efficient and climate responsive through policy, capacity building, and technical support. And the more I work in this space, the more I feel that decarbonization is not about making buildings smarter. Sometimes it is about making them more sensible. What can we learn from traditional architecture? If we look at traditional buildings across India, they were responding to climate without necessarily having the language that we use today. They didn't talk about thermal comfort, solar heat gain, or cooling loads, but they understood these things differently. They understood these things intuitively. They knew where to place a window, where to create a courtyard, which side needed protection from the sun, how a shaded veranda could make a difference. And importantly, they understood that the building was not an isolated object. It was part of a landscape connected to trees, soil, water, and wind. Today, often we separate these things. We design the building first and think about landscape later. We remove trees and then compensate through landscaping. We put in large area of glass and then install larger air conditioner to deal with the heat. So perhaps we should ask whether we are sometimes solving a design problem with a mechanical system. We are also designing away our relationship with climate. There is another thought I keep coming back to, especially when we think about our children. We are increasingly creating very sanitized indoor environments for them. Everything is temperature controlled, sealed, and comfortable with very little exposure to heat, rain, or even small amount of discomfort. Of course, we need a safe environment, comfortable spaces, but I sometimes wonder if in trying to protect our children from every aspect of climate, we are also taking away from them the opportunity to develop a natural resilience to it. A veranda, a courtyard, a shaded garden, or a naturally ventilated corridor gives a child the opportunity to experience climate safely. And this isn't philosophical. Our bodies are already responding to a changing climate. During the recent UK heat wave, there were reports of women experiencing disrupted menstrual cycles, including some having 2 periods in a month. Temperatures reached close to 38 degrees Celsius, which for us in India may not sound extraordinary, but in the UK, this is an extreme event. And I think that contrast is interesting. The same temperature can mean very different things depending on the climate, the buildings, and most importantly, the people experiencing it. So perhaps the question isn't only how do we keep our buildings at 24 degrees, it is also how do we design buildings that help people adapt to the climate around them rather than completely insulating them from it. Orientation is one of the oldest energy efficiency strategy. Take something as basic as building orientation. Before we talk about materials or mechanical systems, we can ask, where is the building facing? Where is the sun? What happens in the morning or in the afternoon? Where does the wind come from? Can we get daylight without excessive heat? These are simple questions, but they become complicated when we stop considering climate at the beginning of design. And this is particularly relevant when we talk about high-rise buildings. We don't have to literally reproduce a traditional Kerala house in a 20-story apartment, but the principles don't have to disappear. A high-rise can still respond to orientation. Facades can be designed differently depending on solar exposure. Balconies and external shadings can reduce heat gain. Windows can be appropriately sized and placed. Common spaces can be naturally ventilated wherever feasible. So perhaps we shouldn't copy traditional architecture, but we should copy the thought behind it. There is another example I feel very strongly about: trees. We often talk about trees in building projects as landscaping, something that provides shade or makes a site look greener. But a mature tree is much more than that. It provides shade, affects the microclimate, can reduce heat around buildings and outdoor spaces. And here in Kerala, there is another function we need to talk about more. Trees hold the soil together. Their roots help stabilize the ground, influence water infiltration, and reduce erosion. So when we remove a mature tree and say we will plant 10 new trees elsewhere, we should ask whether 10 young trees provide the same ecosystem function. They don't, at least not immediately. This is why I think the site should not be treated as an empty canvas waiting for a building to arrive. The site is already providing services before the building is built. The tree is providing cooling, the soil is managing water, vegetation is stabilizing the land. Good design should ask, how can the building work with these existing systems rather than replacing them? Kerala already has a climate responsive vocabulary. Kerala gives us an incredible starting point. Verandas, courtyards, sloping roofs, deep overhangs, shaded transitional spaces, high ceilings, and openings designed around wind and daylight. These weren't aesthetic decisions alone. They had a functional purpose. So when we design today's building, we can ask, what is the modern equivalent of the veranda? What is the modern equivalent of the courtyard? How can we create shaded, comfortable transitional spaces in a high rise? How can balconies provide environmental value rather than simply being decorative? This is where traditional knowledge can become contemporary design. Another place that influenced how I think about buildings is Ladakh. I worked at Himalayan Institute of Alternatives, Ladakh, under Mr. Sonam Wangchuk. And what I learned there is incredibly interesting. It is obviously a different climate zone from Kerala, and that is exactly why it is interesting. In Ladakh, buildings have to respond to extreme cold, intense solar radiation, and large temperature variations. So during the day, the temperature could be around 33, 34, and at night it would drop to minus 10. This is the city I'm talking about, not the remote areas. So traditional buildings evolved around very specific climate response, orientation, compactness, thick walls acting as thermal mass or insulation, placement of openings, and the use of sunlight. What I took from working there is that climate responsive design is not one universal formula. A solution that works in Ladakh may be completely inappropriate in Kerala. In fact, it is completely inappropriate in Kerala. Kerala is warm, humid, rainy. Ladakh is cold, dry. Yet sometimes our modern buildings use standardized solutions, standard glass, standard facade, standard air conditioning systems. But climate is not standardized. The most sustainable building is not necessarily the building with the most technology. It is the building that responds most appropriately to the place. This is where my current work comes in. This thinking connects directly to my work with GBPN and EMC Kerala. At the Building Decarbonization Solution Center, we work on building energy codes and compliance, capacity building, technical advisory, and healthy building guidelines, decarbonization roadmaps. But one thing I have realized is that building decarbonization cannot be the responsibility of the architect or energy engineers alone. It involves municipalities, developers, building owners, engineers, and policymakers. And this is particularly relevant to the work we are doing with urban local bodies, municipal corporation, municipalities, and we plan to also work with panchayat. The decisions that influence a building's energy performance often happen long before the building starts consuming electricity. The person who approves a building, plans a road, protects a tree, or prepare the master plan is also influencing the city's energy consumption. Someone decided the orientation, someone decided the density, people per square kilometer or people per square meter. Someone decided where the road would go, someone decided where a tree would remain, someone decided what kind of buildings could come up there. So energy efficiency is also a planning issue. It is a governance issue. It is definitely a design issue. It is not just an equipment issue, looking beyond operational energy. So we also need to think how much electricity a building consumes. Before a building consumes electricity, we have already used energy and resources to make it, to build it. We extracted materials, we manufactured cement and steel, transported them, changed the site, constructed the building. So when we talk about decarbonization, we should ask both. How do we reduce energy required to operate the building? And how do we reduce the environmental cost of creating the building in the first place? This is why preserving an existing building, retaining a mature tree, using less material, designing for longevity, or avoiding unnecessary demolition can sometimes be as important as installing a high efficiency air conditioning system. So what does this mean for our high-rise future? I don't think the answer is to reject high-rise. Cities are growing, land is limited, densification will happen. The question is, what kind of high-rise are we building? Can it respond to the climate? Can it preserve existing trees? Can it reduce heat gain through orientation and shading? Can it make meaningful use of daylight? And can we reduce dependence on mechanical cooling? Most importantly, can we stop treating energy efficiency as something we add after the building is designed? Energy efficiency should begin before the first line is drawn. So, if I had to leave you with 3 thoughts, they would be: first, look backwards before looking forward. Our traditional buildings contain generations of climate intelligence. We don't need to copy them, but we should understand why they worked. Second, Treat nature as infrastructure. A mature tree, a healthy soil, vegetation, a natural drainage are not obstacles or blockages to development. They are infrastructure that is already working for us. 3. Design for the place. There is no single definition of a sustainable building. A building in Ladakh cannot respond to climate in the same way as a building in Kerala. For me, building decarbonization is not just about consuming less electricity. It is about designing better, building less wastefully, respecting the climate we are in, and making buildings work with the systems around them rather than against them. And perhaps the most exciting part is that we already know many of these principles. We just need to start using them again. So, I would like to leave you with one question. If our ancestors had to design a building in today's climate crisis with the technology available to us today, what would they keep from the past and what would they refuse to repeat? Thank you.
Energy Talk with EMC. അറിവിന് ഊർജം പകരാം. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you.